So it's an old East End ritual called the hokey cokey, but down at SOAS we've turned it into the strikey strikey, alright? Specially designed for the picket lines, and the principle, we need a circle, you're going to join hands round here, all join up, alright, alright. So the basics of it is you put your right leg in your, your arm, you put your right arm in, your right arm out, in, out, shake it all about, you do the hokey cokey, you turn around, that's what it's all about, then all round to the middle, oh strikey, oh strikey, oh wages, pensions, rah, 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 you put your left arm in, your left arm out, and shake it all about, you do the strikey, and you turn around, that's what it's all about.
Hi, I've actually not been out very much this week because I've not been well, but this is an issue that's really close to my heart, casualisation. It's an issue that is at the root of so many other problems that we see in the higher education sector. The fear of working precariously and relying on the goodwill of your supervisors or your immediate managers. I mean, that leads people to end up taking on these ever-increasing workloads, to not feel able to say no. And it's doing those extras that they think will help them lead to that elusive permanent contract, or just help them keep the one that they've got. It causes people not to speak up when they're being bullied. It causes them to not feel able to speak up when other people around them are being bullied. And this leads to the really toxic situation that we've got at this university and others, where people feel, unable to actually make their lives better and make the lives of the people around them better. It stops people being able to plan their lives and make just like those simple decisions, whether or not they can go on holiday, whether or not they can sign that contract on the house. It's really pervasive casualisation against staff, and it makes people sick. They've got great financial worries because you never know when your contract's ending. You save money to put aside for those stints when you're unemployed. You can't make decisions for the long term, and the stress and the worry of waiting to find out whether or not you're going to keep your job, and that's all pervasive. And this disproportionately affects women and disabled people and people of colour. We see that more and more, that these groups are disproportionately affected by these casual contracts, and being in those positions, that actually leads to the exacerbation of things like the gender pay gap, the race pay gap, pensions gaps when you've got years and years of service that doesn't count towards your pension. I started out working in a different sector. I worked in field archaeology, which is renowned for being sort of a really poor employer. Really bad conditions, really bad contracts, and they were the norm. So it was a real shock to me when I started working for Cambridge University. And I looked at the terms and conditions that I was being offered on a TES, on a test contract. And I just thought that this is worse than anything I had put up with as an archaeologist. I was expected to put up with it with a smile as well. It's you're meant to be grateful for what you're being offered. So I worked for over 2 years on a test contract, and they have no security. It is a 0 hours contract, and no sick pay. It's a long time to be without sick pay. Just like simple things, knowing that you can you can take, you know, a couple of days off with a heavy cold, and actually more than that, knowing that if you have something seriously wrong with you, that you actually do have a safety net. You know, it's really important, and it's disgraceful that somewhere like the University of Cambridge thinks that it's okay to employ staff on these sorts of terms and conditions. Somewhere as rich as Cambridge, that, you know, you've got people questioning whether or not they can pay the rent or take a sick day. You know, this isn't what life should be like in 2019. It's 2019, isn't it? Yes. But yeah, so, I mean, I think what's also really damaging about casual contracts, particularly in the higher education sector, is that it's often hidden. There's lots of people on these contracts. You know, 50% of our workforce here are on some kind of precarious contract. But people actually don't feel able to talk about it. I mean, I felt ashamed being on a test contract for 2 years. I felt ashamed to let somebody treat me that badly, that I was sort of putting up with these conditions. And, you know, other colleagues, they didn't know. You know, I would talk about it sometimes, and people would be really shocked. And I think, you know, what we really need to make clear is just how pervasive this problem is and how negative it is for people working in the sector. It's, you know, it's something that I can see how it might have come in to higher education, sort of trying, you know, bringing in a few extra people on a project basis. But actually now we're seeing that it's an institutionalised problem. It's part of the system. And that's why, you know, as well as doing the work that we're doing locally, we have to have things like this strike, where we're standing up and standing together against this casualisation. And it really is the only way to make the big impacts that will impact on lots and lots of people's lives.
Hi everyone, I'm Marina. I'm a third-year PhD in law, and I got involved with the anti-casualization campaign after I started teaching. And the thing with teaching in Cambridge is that it's basically like a unicorn. It seems really difficult to get. And it's kind of done in these secret rooms, and you have to network, and there's no centralized allocation system, and the way it's assigned is really non-transparent. And so you have people who get stuck with way more teaching than they can handle, and they don't know how to say no, and they don't feel they have the power to say no. And then you have people who can't get any teaching, and so they don't get any experience, or they get one or two groups of students, which basically means that they're really, really underpaid. And that's a huge issue. So I was really excited about my teaching gig for about 3 weeks. And my students were terrific, and they were a really, really great group. But kind of week 4, I did a mini calculation, and I realized that I was actually spending around 12 hours preparing for teaching, doing all of the admin, booking rooms because we don't have offices, trying to send all of the emails, marking. And so I was actually being paid around £4 per hour. If I calculated that, which was less than half minimum wage. And that didn't really feel right, and it made me feel really exploited, and really, really undervalued. And on top of this, we are really poorly trained, and students, and we deserve better. We get a 3-hour training, and that's it. Then you're on your own, and you're meant to know how to teach people. And some subjects are tricky, some subjects are triggering, some topics are really difficult to deal with. There's no one who we can go to, and there's this expectation that you're gonna go to your supervisor and ask them about your teaching, but the thing is, I don't wanna waste my supervisor time on that. She is not paid to do this work. The university should allocate someone whose job it is to do this, not just like offload it on overworked staff who are already underpaid for the amount of work that they're doing. And then On top of the fact that we're all really, really underpaid, I'm also Bosnian and on a Tier 4 visa, which means that I get to experience the brunt of hostile environment, which means that basically colleges can't pay me directly. They have to pay my college, who monitors the numbers of hours that I'm doing, and has to report to Home Office if I go above this. And so I don't get paid when everyone else gets paid. I get paid a term or 2 terms later, depending on when this is processed. And there's an assumption that basically we should just be grateful because this is a learning experience and it's helping us get a job afterwards. But the thing is, we're providing work for the university, and this is a learning experience for us, but considering how poorly we're trained, we're not actually learning a whole lot. We're just doing skilled labor that is really, really exploited. And this shouldn't really be this way. And it's quite crushing. So basically, we need transparent and centralized allocation of teaching. And this can be done through departments. It's not really difficult to achieve this. And the anti-casualization campaign has been working on this. We need better training, and we also need paid training. Like, we are... We need ongoing support during our first year of teaching, just someone who we can go to with any questions that we might have, because sometimes it does get really tricky. And this person needs to be paid for the work that they're doing also. We need to be paid for prep time, and we need to be paid better rates, and they need to be properly increasing, not in some like mysterious way that some like council decides at a weird meeting. It just needs to be done better. And we also need the university to just really step on and resist a hostile environment, and resist prevent. And the thing is, university has the power to do all of these things. It's just choosing not to do them, which is why the strike's really important.
Now, the Graduate Union has recently achieved a major win concerning fair allocation of teaching, and I would like to share this with you. The process of how teaching opportunities are allocated to postgraduate students is often opaque. Though this varies between colleges and departments, it often transpires that directors of studies and course coordinators tend to involve postgraduate students that they already know personally, meaning that teaching opportunities end up being offered only to a few students and not to others. This often results in students who are mostly home students, who are undergraduates at Oxbridge institution, or recurrently the same few students overwhelmingly receiving these opportunities at expenses of others. This disproportionately affects international students who are often not familiar with the Oxbridge undergraduate supervision system. The practice in providing mentoring, access to paid teacher training, and access to continuing professional development also vary significantly across colleges and departments. Postgraduate students should have equal access and opportunity to apply and be selected for teaching opportunities. This should be through a formal, transparent, and reliable process and system. All positions should be advertised properly so that any qualified student may apply for them. The remit of the role, amount of regularity of the remuneration, and the provisions for sickness and leave must all be clearly specified in the statement or contract drawn when availing such opportunities. This should be through a standardized system across the university. So we recommended a web-based system to advertise and recruit highly paid teachers, which would increase transparency and fair access to teaching opportunities. A template for such a system should be shared with all heads of departments and faculties. So the university has been provided with a model, a sort of model for a web-based system. And this model was discussed at a number of university committees. In particular, we've been fighting very hard at the Senior Tutor Education Committee, STEC, and STC, the Senior Tutor Committee, and we finally approved this. So the university is now working on a shared system that can work for both faculties and departments and colleges, that is standardized and transparent, which is a big win. It's just very minor step, is a first step, so we need to keep fighting. The Graduate Union has been asking for and will continue to ask for decent contracts with special emphasis on the importance of employment contract, fair pay, where all work, including work carried out by postgraduate students, should be paid. These also include preparation timing for teaching. Rights at work, including counseling support, occupational health and visas, respect for graduate workers, and fair allocation of teaching. Thank you very much.
But look across the country, and speaking as an active trade unionist, I've taught for 15 years in Long Road, Sixth Form College. We look around what they're trying to do in terms of attacking workers' rights. Strikes like this very quickly become a challenge to what our rulers would like to do to us. Because if you look at the RMT strike on South West Trains, which they announced a few days ago, look what's being threatened. They've said we're going to strike for 27 days across December to fight for safe trains, for guards on those trains. You know, that dispute that's been running for ages. And in Johnson's latest pronouncement in the manifesto, they're threatening guaranteed minimum service during strikes, which is scabbing by any other name. We want to fight for the right to strike, and we want to fight for the right to challenge our bosses when they don't give us what we need and what we want and what we deserve. Don't forget tomorrow, the climate strike, student climate strike tomorrow is another great opportunity to bring together movements and to show that this country can fight back just as well as they can in Chile, just as well as they can in Hong Kong. Solidarity from Trades Council, solidarity from NEU, and carry on with the strikes have been brilliant so far.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Hello, I'm the Secretary of the Cambridgeshire branch of the National Education Union, and I really just bring our solidarity and our support to your actions, because it is common practice across all the education sector, if not the whole of industry, that the conditions we work under lead to the things that people have said before.
2 years ago, I was one of thousands of graduate teachers and researchers in the United States fighting tooth and nail simply to be recognized as a union. We faced enormous hostility, and what this hostility taught us was that we needed to organize, organize, organize. We knocked on doors, we went to offices, we went lab to lab, and we talked about the precarious conditions that all of us actually faced. And what I've learned as a graduate student and now postdoc is that casualization breeds isolation and alienation. This is especially true at Cambridge. Casualized workers here are spread across dozens of colleges, and this decentralization is great for our employers. It discourages us from talking to one another about the working conditions that we experience, and it dilutes our power that we have when we come together. We must reject this isolation and talk to each other in real life about the working conditions that we experience. And many people have talked about those working conditions. And these conversations about no contracts, about precarious labor, about the fact that we don't have safety nets if we need to go on family or medical leave, about the fact that our futures as teachers and researchers are in doubt. These conversations, that's precisely what the Raise the Bar campaign has been about. Each of these thousands of postcards, that 1,000 postcards, almost 1,000 postcards, represents a conversation that has taken place about casualization at this university. So thank you for signing all of these.
Casualization's gone!